Welcome to the Bakersfield City Council meeting. This television broadcast is brought to you by the local cable companies, the County of Kern, and the City of Bakersfield. You can watch the rebroadcast of this meeting Saturday at 7 p.m., Sunday at 10 a.m., and the following Wednesday at 7 p.m. You can download the agenda for this meeting at www.bakersfieldcity.us. Presiding over this evening's meeting, the Honorable Mayor Karen K. Go.
Good evening. It's my pleasure to call to order the 5:15 regular City Council meeting of November 16th, 2022. Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Mayor Go.
Here.
Vice Mayor Weir.
Here.
Councilmember Arias.
Here.
Councilmember Gonzalez.
Here.
Councilmember Smith.
I'm here.
Councilmember Freeman.
Yes.
Councilmember Gray. Here. And Councilmember Parlier.
Here.
Thank you. And tonight we have the pleasure of having Dr. Anil Mehta, who is a gastroenterologist and president of the Chinmaya Mission Bakersfield, which organizes weekly classes for our Hindu children to teach them about culture and heritage. They also, the mission also organizes yoga and meditation, which is open to all members of the community. And then following the invocation, we had the pleasure of having our Ward 6 Youth Commissioner, newly appointed, Miriam Webster, who's a Stockdale High student, a standout student who's maintaining 4.0 GPA. She's involved with music, athletics, as well as other campus activities. She's in varsity volleyball, varsity track. She volunteers at local hospital. She helps with the local food bank and is involved with the Organ and Bone Marrow Donor Club and with the International Club. And she has her proud dad, Tom Webster, sitting next to her, who's a city employee. So, Doctor, would you all please stand now?
Good evening. I'll chant a Sanskrit prayer and then give the meaning. Om Sarve Bhavantu Sukhinaha, Sarve Santu Niramayaha, Sarve Bhadrani Pashyantu, Ma Kaschit Dukha Bhag Bhavet. Om Asato Ma Sat Gamaya, Tamaso Ma Jyotir Gamaya, Mrityor Ma Amritam Gamaya. Om Shanti, Shanti, Shanti. Briefly translated, this prayer means, O Lord, may everybody be happy, may everybody be free from disease, may everybody have good fortune, and may there be no sorrow in the world. The second prayer goes, O Lord, lead us from untruth to truth, from darkness to light, and from ignorance to knowledge. And chanting Shanti 3 times means, may there be peace in the cosmos, in the universe. May there be peace in my neighborhood, and may there be peace in my heart. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Miriam.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you.
Thank you, Miriam, and you may be seated. Well, welcome to everyone. It's good to see so many people participating this evening. Here are a few guidelines to help our meeting run smoothly. We request that you turn off your phones. Please be courteous in the use of cameras and videos. And for safety reasons and as a courtesy to others, no signs are allowed in the council chamber or in the lobby. Applause is allowed during the presentations portion of meetings, but not during the other portions of the meeting. Everyone in attendance is expected to adhere to the rules of decorum established by the resolution of the City Council. Failure to abide by the city's rules of decorum, including any disruptive behavior that interferes with our ability to have an orderly and efficient meeting, prevents the council from conducting the business of the city. Consider this a first warning to everyone in attendance that conduct that disrupts the meeting may result in expulsion or the chambers being cleared. That's or the chambers being cleared. Behavior that disrupts the meeting includes repetitive statements, going off topic, shouting, outbursts from the audience, and surpassing the 2-minute time limit. Madam Clerk, next item, please.
Public statements.
Thank you. As was previously displayed on these television screens, we have interpreters present for Spanish and Punjabi languages. For those who need interpretation services with the meeting, specifically with item 11A, please see the interpreter at the City Council Chambers front door for more information. They're actually back there. A helpful reminder for all of those presenting and giving comments today. For the benefit of our interpreters, would you ask you to pace yourself and just speak clearly into the microphone during your comments so that the interpreters can clearly translate your message. And in keeping with the Council's resolution, the public statements portion is now divided into 2 periods. There's a period for items listed on the meeting agenda and for items not on the meeting agenda. Statements for items listed on tonight's agenda are given a 2-minute time limit, 20 minutes total per agenda item. The consent calendar as a whole constitutes 1 agenda item. Statements regarding items not listed on the agenda are given a 2-minute time limit, 20 minutes total. If you have written comments that are longer than your verbal statement, please give them to the clerk. She'll give copies to the council. And if you're here to make a public statement, please fill out a public speaker card and give your completed card to the city clerk. We ask that you mark whether you're here to speak on an item listed on tonight's agenda or on a matter not on the agenda. Speakers who do not identify a specific agenda item will be presumed speakers for the non-agenda portion. Those speakers will be called during the non-agenda portion of the meeting. We're very interested and concerned with your issues. However, due to the public notice requirement of the Brown Act, the council cannot take action when an item isn't on the agenda. The council can, however, refer your matter to committee or request that staff contact you. Madam Clerk, do we have any public speakers regarding items listed on tonight's agenda? This would be the time for anyone wanting to speak on the deferred business item 11A, the Majestic Project, to provide comments. Madam Clerk?
Mayor Go, we have received 4 public speaker cards for items listed on tonight's agenda. The first public speaker is Terry Maxwell regarding items Q and P.
Welcome.
I do have a question first, Mayor Go, if I might. If I have something that I want to comment that is not on the agenda, do I get 2 more minutes, or should I include that in the 2 minutes I am presently given?
That would be separate.
That would be separate. Okay, then I would reserve what I'm handing out for the non-agenda items. The 2 agenda items that I am interested in are the items 8, excuse me, my name is Terry Maxwell, by the way. Agreements, let's see, it's under agreements 8P and 8Q. This is the Economic Opportunity Area Incentive Program, grants being given to the Boys and Girls Club of Kern County and the DBA, Downtown Business Association. This was passed in 2016, I believe. Council members Parlier, Ware, and Bob Smith were on the council at that time. I at first was not really for this. However, in my conversations with Willie Rivera, he came to help me understand what this money was supposed to be for and who it was supposed to help. And as it states in the administrative report, this money is for businesses. I don't see where either one of these organizations fit into the criteria that you're looking for in order to use this money. It was supposed to be a incentive program, economic opportunity, where we took money and set it aside. The Boys and Girls Club is a great organization. I understand, and you may look at this like, well, we don't want to take $80,000 away from them. You're not taking $80,000 away from them. You're taking $80,000 away from good business people who could use this money. The Downtown Business Association is not a business. It is a nonprofit. And they already get money from the people who contract with them to represent them. Spending $50,000 with them, I think, is a really spit in our eye for the people who voted for this in 2016, because we had certain things that we wanted to see done with this. It was supposed to be for business people. Neither one of these organizations qualify under that definition. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Maxwell. Madam Clerk, next speaker, please.
Mayor Go, the following 3 speakers will be speaking regarding item 11A. The first speaker, Sandra Plasencia. Second speaker, Perry Ellerts. And the last speaker is Natalie Santamaria.
Welcome. Please introduce yourself.
Hi, my name is Sandra Plasencia Rodriguez. I'm a policy advocate with Leadership Council for Justice and Accountability, and I'm here for 11A. I am here once more to urge the City Council to deny the rezone and general plan amendment change for the Majestic project. Based on the conversations we have been having with residents, we are advocating for a no project alternative, asking for no warehouse and just commercial on the site. As we have mentioned before, concerns regarding the project have been surrounding air pollution, traffic safety, health concerns based on the impact this project will have on the surrounding communities. Based on our outreach efforts, the majority of residents are under the impression that this project is only a shopping center, not a warehouse distribution center. Additionally, the signs on the site say neighborhood shopping center coming soon. And another one says retail, entertainment, mixed use, and office, but neither are saying distribution center. This is shameful and deceitful. As shown in the EIR, the majority of the project will be a distribution center. The Majestic company must be transparent and accountable. If Majestic wants to build a warehouse in Greenfield, you must be honest and transparent with the residents as well. Residents have a right to know what will be built in their community if the project continues. Majestic has not committed to any enforceable mitigation measures. The language used for mitigation measures is passive and merely encourages implementation. Majestic must adopt enforceable mitigation measures as required by CEQA and include the following as requested by residents. A hawk system on the intersections of Berkshire Road, H Street and Hoskins, Berkshire and Monitor, and Hoskins and Monitor Street. LED lights on Berkshire Road between the intersections of South H Street, Hayden Hill, Hoskins Avenue, and South Union Avenue. Fund the installation of missing sidewalks along the intersection of Monitor Street and Hoskins Avenue at the intersection of Hoskins Avenue and Union Avenue, where the students that walk home and have to cross Union Avenue, there's a dirt path. That's not acceptable. Fund the development of a community resilience center to be utilized by local community organizations for community programming and climate adaptation, emergency response.
Ms. Plasencia, your time's up. Can you just wrap it up, please?
Yes, yeah. I just want to say thank you to everyone for listening to us. I know this has been a long fight. Additionally, we met with residents last night in the dark. It was cold outside. It was freezing. We still met. And I wanted to thank all the residents that are with us tonight. If they can please stand up if you're in a position to this program. Thank you so much.
Thank you, and thank you, Ms. Plasencia. Next speaker, please.
Perry Ellerts, followed by Natalie Santamaria.
Welcome. Please introduce yourself.
Good evening, Mayor, City Council. My name is Perry Ellerts. I'm a staff attorney with Leadership Council for Justice and Accountability. You just heard from my colleague. I'm here to talk about some of the legal issues in the city's EIR and some of the deficiencies. So given Greenfield's demographics and the significant adverse impacts this project will have on housing, this project, as is proposed, is likely to result in an unlawful discriminatory effect in violation of the Fair Employment and Housing Act. Land use practices that result in unlawful discriminatory effects under FEHA include the citing of toxic polluting land uses in a manner that adversely impacts housing opportunities. The city has identified alternative locations for this project, some of which are located away from residents. We believe these alternative locations are much better suited for this type of project. The residents we are working with are in favor of the commercial development in the site. Further, the city must implement enforceable, meaningful mitigation measures. As of now, many of the mitigation measures in the EIR are not enforceable and thus not CEQA compliant. For example, mitigation measure TRNDF10 states the warehouse user shall be encouraged to implement a local hiring program. That language is in many of the mitigation measures in this EIR. Encouraging behavior is not enforceable. It doesn't result in any meaningful mitigation, and residents are going to suffer as a result. We ask the city to review all the current mitigation measures and ensure they're enforceable and compliant with CEQA. Additionally, there are feasible alternatives available and additional mitigation measures that we highlight in our comment letter that need to be added to this project to reduce impacts to residents. That includes the mitigation measures around electric vehicles and electric trucks for this project. Lastly, we ask the City Council to appoint a
Mr.
compliance
Ellis,
officer.
your time is up. Can you just wrap up your comments,
Yes.
please?
Last sentence. We ask the City Council to appoint a compliance officer to ensure all the mitigation measures are followed for this project. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Ellis. Next speaker, please.
Natalie Santamaria.
Welcome. Please introduce yourself.
Good afternoon. My name is Natalie Santamaria, and I am a resident of Ward 7 and live very, very close to where this project is being proposed. I am here tonight not as representing my organization as I was last time, again, as a community member opposing this and asking the city to not give the permission to transform the permit to industrial. When I moved to that neighborhood, it was promised, and it has been promised, that it will be for commercial and residential. I would like it to keep it that way. We're looking forward to a shopping center, to retail stores. I mentioned a community center, beautiful park. There's many opportunities, but not a warehouse that is going to be most of that area that will be covered. We already highlighted the pollution, the traffic, and all of the other things that are concerning to community members. Please do your due diligence. Look at all of the things that have been brought up so that we can ensure that what gets built there is what was promised: a retail shopping center, a beautiful park, and not a warehouse. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Santamaria. Madam Clerk, any other speakers for items listed on the agenda?
Mayor Go, that was our final speaker for items listed on tonight's agenda.
Thank you. Do we have any speakers for items not listed on the agenda?
Mayor Go, we have received and provided a staff memorandum transmitting correspondence received regarding this item. In addition, we have 3 public speakers for items not listed on tonight's agenda. The first public speaker is Ed Gade.
Welcome.
Thank you. Good evening, Mayor Go, City Council, staff, city staff members. I'm here tonight to invite each of you and your constituents to a Kern County World War II Veterans Memorial dedication date at Jastrow Park at Saturday, December 10th at 10 a.m. We will be gifting this World War II memorial to the city once we're done with our dedication that day. So I want to, first of all, thank the council for their gracious support, their understanding, and helping us along with this project. It's a long overdue memorial. It's going to be a special place of reverence, remembrance, and education for all. And we look forward to having this special day and then gifting the memorial after the dedication to our great city of Bakersfield. Thank you so much.
Thank you. And for the record, would you just say your name, please?
I'm sorry. My name is Ed Gady. I'm the president of the Kern County World War II Veterans Memorial Organization. And again, our organization, our our executive members and directors, thank all the city council members for their support. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Gady. Madam Clerk, next speaker, please. Oh, Councilmember Gonzalez.
Thank you, Mayor. I just wanted to say thank you to Mr. Gady for his leadership and his tenacity in making this project happen. I'm very excited to see this dedication in Jastrow Park, and many of our community members in Westchester are very excited. So, Mr. Gady, thank you so much, and thank your committee for all the work that you're doing and all the work that you've done. So it's certainly a wonderful gift for our community and certainly long overdue.
Thank you, Andre.
Thank you, Councilmember Gonzalez.
And if I can, just one item I want to ask City Manager Clegg. When we celebrated the groundbreaking of this memorial, one of the issues that came up was with regard to parking for those who are disabled. And so I want to make sure that we can make accommodations for those who might need special parking on street near the memorial before this dedication day. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Gonzalez. Councilmember Gray.
And I also, Ed, wanted to say thank you, and to your committee. I know you all have been working really hard on this. The importance of this memorial goes far beyond us. It goes into generations to come, where our history is being lost. And as our World War II veterans are dying at a fast pace, those stories are not going to be living history any longer, and they can be forgotten very easily. So I really do appreciate that you all have put the work into this and that our community is receiving this wonderful gift. And I pray that every school child in the Bakersfield City and Kern County can come to that park and see the many memorials that we are so proud of. And I just want to say on this note, last weekend we celebrated Veterans Day, and thousands of people came to that parade with those children waving their flags. And it was a great thing to see and to experience. And I just want to say thank you to the community. We have a very patriotic community, and it just blessed my heart beyond what I can even express. So thank you for all your hard work in the veterans community. We appreciate it so much.
Thank you, Councilmember Gray. Madam Clerk, next speaker, please.
Thank you.
Paul Linfesti, followed by Terry Maxwell.
Welcome.
evening.
Please introduce yourself.
Oh, I'm sorry. Paul Infesti. I am currently Ward 7, but with the new election, I'm in Ward 1 for the voting purposes. I meant to bring this up for a few months now, but either lost my courage to or time ran out. But this is just a small little item that you might want to consider on the website under City Council. It says that the meeting schedule is always for the first and third Wednesdays of the month, but there have been exceptions, but they're not noted on that page. It would be nice if there was an asterisk that would give the exceptions or an actual link to the PDF for the full year schedule. I did manage to find, I showed up several times when there had been a meeting change. That's why I'm bringing this up. I did find out by going through last year's agendas, I found out in the 2nd November, you all voted for it. So I could click on that link, but I had to go through a couple of things. I noticed you did it at the last meeting as well that I was able to pull up for next year's, but it'd be convenient if there could be like a link on that City Council so anyone can pull that up. I'm someone that likes to put all of the dates for a year in my calendar at the time and not wait for the agenda that comes out each month. That's all. Thank you. I think you all do a great job what you do, and I know it's a stressful job sometimes, but I'm really glad we have this system where we can come and bring these points up. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Linfesti. Councilmember Parlier.
Thank you, Mayor. Well, since you used to be in Ward 7, I'll fill this one. If staff can reach out to this gentleman and maybe he can drill down a little bit further, know exactly what he's talking about, and adapt accordingly. Thank you.
Thank you. Madam Clerk, next speaker, please.
Terry Maxwell.
Welcome again.
Thank you. My name is Terry Maxwell. You know, when I first joined the city council many years ago. When I first got elected, the first thing that happened was the person who was running Chamber of Commerce came to me and said, "You're a member of the board, the GRC, Governmental Regulations Committee, and you cannot serve on that committee while you are on the city council." So I resigned that position because I didn't want anything to be in the way of making good decisions on a board. The reason I gave you that other sheet of paper, I want you to look at that. I was a little concerned because when I look at the people who are involved with the DBA, the DBDC, and then this thing called the Hub, I became concerned because you kind of see the same names on all this. Now on this Hub, they say that the mission they make for Bakersfield is a better place to invest, work, play, live, a non-profit committed to redefining, revitalizing Bakersfield urban core. When you look at the, and that seems to be kind of the same thing you guys are all working on, huh? Funny how that happens. When you look at the people that are on this board, you see one of your city council people, you see another city councilman with a couple of family members that are on it. You also find that there is a gentleman with the last name of Cater who has a architectural firm, and his brother happens to work for the city. I'd like to know when this is going to stop. When is it going to stop that people making votes on this council are going to be recusing themselves because they have a vested interest in how those things turn out? $80,000 to the Boys and Girls Club is one thing, but $50,000 to the DBA is another that seems to be complicit in their efforts to make sure that something happens that their own boards are supposed to be responsible for. The last thing I'd like to do is ask the Public Works Director to please give us some information on, and let me put my glasses on real quick, information on those walls that are going in the cul-de-sacs on 24th Street. We'd like to know the access to the wall construction plan. We'd like to have project contract number, and we also like to know the total cost of those 5 walls because we think there's some errors in the way that you were putting those together. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Maxwell. Councilmember Gonzalez.
Thank you, Mayor. Mr. Maxwell, I'm not quite sure how to respond to you. I will just say this. The Hub of Bakersfield is a community-based organization that raises its own funds through private donors. We do not affiliate with the city. We do not have city contracts. And there is a clear separation. I'm very clear of conflict of interest policies, and we make a lot of strides. I personally make a lot of effort to make sure I don't overstep. And so there is no real conflict there. And I'm surprised that you bring this up at this time. Really am. But there's so many people in this community who are working to make our community a better place and build up, and who have vision for a better Bakersfield. And then there are people who try to tear things down. And I want to be part of building up and part of creating new vision. I hope you can join us. Thank you.
Madam Clerk, next speaker, please.
Alfredo Osornia.
Welcome. Please introduce yourself.
Good evening. My name is Alfredo Sornia. Sorry if my voice is a little shaky. I didn't anticipate speaking to everybody today this morning when I woke up, but I saw that there was the plan to rezone the area off of Brookshire and South 8th Street for the Majestic project. And as a resident of the area, I feel like we've been misled. Like, we all expected a shopping center there. I know, like, Bass Pro Shops was supposed to open up, but that went nowhere. And now, like, they're trying to drop like 1 million square foot facility there. It's going to be an attractive nuisance also for street takeovers. A big giant parking lot like that, we're just asking for trouble. And there's also so many schools around there that trucks are going to have to cut through those streets to get to. If they're going from Union, they're going to go through Berkshire. They're going to go through Hosking. There's schools on all those streets. It's a safety issue. And on top of that, like, I saw that they sent out letters for residents within 300 feet, within a 300-foot radius. But that, if you look at the map, like, that's only a handful of houses. The people impacted is in the thousands. I feel like it's something that is almost trying to be like snuck in, and that's why I'm here tonight to voice my opposition to the project and to the rezoning. Thank you.
Thank you. Madam Clerk, do we have any other speakers for this section?
Mayor Go, that was our final speaker.
Thank you. Next item, please.
It looks like we have one more speaker, Mayor. Cassie Biddle.
Welcome.
Thank you. My name's Cassie Biddle. I'm here as a business owner, as a resident, not as my role as a planning commissioner. First, I would like to thank all of City Council and all of city staff for not only everything that you've done with the homeless issue, but with helping get businesses downtown and really driving that to be the heart of Bakersfield. It's amazing that you still answer our phone calls with all the complaints that you got, and I understand that it gets very difficult, always having to be reactive to complaints instead of working towards something bigger. So I know it seems a little funny to be giving a grant to the Downtown Business Association, but what sits behind me are the business owners that have been downtown for many years. So it may not be bringing new businesses downtown, but it's our way of supporting them and giving them a level of security to know that their investments are safe. So I know it's not the right time, but I would like to thank you guys for even considering us, giving us a grant, and thank you for everything that you've done. So thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Biddle. Madam Clerk, next item, please.
Consent calendar items 7A through 7AR for approval.
Thank you, Vice Mayor.
Thank you, Mayor. I am pulling item 7P. Does any council member wish to pull another item? Seeing none, I'll make a motion to approve items 7A through 7AR with the exception of item P, 7B.
You have a motion. Please cast your votes.
Motion is unanimously approved.
Thank you. And now, Vice Mayor, for 7P.
Thank you, Mayor. During the campaign trail, what were the two main subjects? Homelessness and crime. It went throughout the district, throughout the ward. It's an issue that we've tried to minimize. I don't think anybody believes that we have done all that we can do or have an approach that will end crime and homelessness. And tonight, I don't want to talk about homelessness. I want to talk about crime. And as a new council member to part of Westchester and above 24th Street and that area, it is clear just after a few months that crime is overtaking that area. And I get phone calls, believe me, I get phone calls. And they're not happy campers when they call. So when I've had a hard day and I get a phone call, I'm not a happy camper. So tonight we have a chance. We have an opportunity to face off against crime and destruction of property. I don't need to tell anybody that we have not received the results we want. Once again, continuing doing the same thing over and over will not solve our problem. We need something new. We need something that is innovative. We need something that has already been tested and proven effective. And that is what is before us on item P tonight. We have the chance to use a tested system that has been very effective and will be very effective as we move forward. I totally understand and believe that this item is critical to that area, and it is a test site for other areas in this town. We have an opportunity tonight to do something that will help alleviate a problem in this town. So item P is consideration of a grant agreement to the Downtown Business Association in the amount of $50,000 for purposes of assisting the DBA in providing additional security to the downtown area. I am totally in favor of that agreement, but would like to see the grant come from available ARPA funding instead of through the EOA grant program. And I've been told that this agreement is eligible for ARPA funding with appropriate additional language. With that in mind, I have two motions to make this evening, one on the approval of the agreement and another on the Budget and Finance Committee. So first, I'd like to make a motion to approve the grant agreement with the DBA with direction to the city attorney to incorporate additional required ARPA language and city standard insurance requirements and any other non-substantive changes that may be necessary. And with the understanding that if the DBA has any objection to those changes, that the grant agreement be brought back to City Council for further consideration. That is my first motion.
Councilmember Gonzalez, do you wish to speak at this time, or is it unrelated?
I'll wait until the second motion.
Okay, thank you. You have a motion. Please cast your vote.
I'm sorry. Are we taking these motions in turn?
One and
One,
then two.
and then
Okay, I apologize. Then I'll go now. if I may.
Councilmember Gonzalez.
Okay, thank you, Mayor. I apologize. Councilmember Weir, thank you for your remarks. I do agree with you that public safety is the #1 priority facing our community. It's something that we have been working on for years, and we continue to press forward to look at new strategies and innovative solutions. It has consumed much of our time. I served in the area that you now serve in Westchester for practically 6 years, and know very well the calls you're talking about and the concerns. And I will tell you, and I'll tell the public, that it's not just Westchester. It is also California and Stockdale. And my colleague, Councilwoman Gray, shares that area with me, that intersection, which is also riddled with criminal activity. But there are many other sections of the area. I just acquired an area in Ward 1 that used to be Ward 1, MLK Boulevard, which is also experiencing significant criminal activity. And so this is a citywide issue, and it requires a citywide solution. And so I have a few questions regarding how this in particular is good public policy for the city right now. So I have a couple of questions. One is, first, Mr. Saldana, if you will, regarding ARPA funds. The statement was made that this would qualify if additional language was included. What is that additional language?
I'm not familiar with the additional language. I'll refer to the city attorney or city manager for that.
Yeah, thank you, Councilmember. That the ARP eligibility is not based on the content of the actual scope of work. Just wanting to make sure that, because the contract as proposed doesn't reference that funding source, and so we want to just update that to make sure that it references that particular funding source. But it's not about the ARPA criteria itself, it's just making sure the contract has that language.
So this is a qualifying expense under ARPA?
Correct.
Okay. If I can ask Chief Terry a few questions, please. Because it should be noted to the public, and a reminder for my colleagues on the council, that we actually have a private security contract citywide, and that contract has been with Transwest Security. And I just want to ask you, Chief, what has been the effectiveness of Transwest Security?
Councilmember Gonzalez, members of the council, it's been very effective. We've been very pleased with the partnership and the additional support that's been provided by Transwest to address what was said earlier, that there are many citywide issues that they're assisting us with. So we've been very happy with the partnership.
And so this particular security contract is with a firm called O&A. How do you envision this particular contract working in concert with our other additional private security, Transwest, and with your department?
Councilmember Gonzalez, I don't know the exact scope of the work that the contract will will identify. But we've been working with them over the last several months as they've been under contract privately downtown. And there have been no issues with them integrating with us on calls for service, responding. They've been responsive to our requests. And it's worked very closely as it has with Transwest. That's been our experience so far.
Do you believe that ONA is more effective than Transwest?
No, I can't say that. Based on our experience with them, it's worked very closely. A lot of their duties that they've been contracted for are similar to what we are using Transwest for. Of course, we are using Transwest across the city. We meet with them on a weekly basis, and we use data to drive where our points of emphasis are, or areas of emphasis for Transwest for that week. I don't believe up until now that the ONA security contract with DBA is exactly that. I think it's been more nuanced and individualized, and so I think they provide a different type of service. And so it's hard for me to make the exact comparison, but
Okay. It was stated that this strategy is effective. My question is, how effective is it, and how would we measure that?
Well, just to give you some example, then over the last couple of years, Transwest has gone to thousands of incidents across our city that police officers did not have to go to, did not need to go to. They've provided and been sources of medical aid calls and stood by while medical aid responded. A police officer did not have to do that. They've interrupted crimes. They've certainly helped with trespassing issues and those kinds of quality of life and loitering type complaints across the city. They've been very effective in helping us deal with these kinds of issues across the city. Again, we meet with them every week. We move them around. We try to be very strategic to address these issues across the city. But they've been very effective in many of those kinds of areas.
Okay. And Councilmember Weir made a comment that we cannot continue to do the same thing over and over again, that we have to try new strategies. I agree with that. We have to try new strategies. We have to be more innovative. We have to continuously push and look for new approaches to enhancing public safety. Can you describe some of the strategies that your department and the city manager is exploring right now and planning for in the future?
Thank you for the question, and it's a broad one, and I do share the same desire, and we are pulling every lever we can to address public safety issues across the city. We know that so many of our neighborhoods and our businesses and our commercial centers are suffering in a variety of ways, and we're working very diligently to try to address them, both in the short term and in the long term. As the council is well aware of, we've been increasing staffing over the last several years. We've restored some services that we didn't previously have that dealt with some of the property crime issues. We are trying to deal with some of those immediate quality of life, things that interrupt people's daily lives, both as a business owner and as a resident. At the same time, we're using the growth of the police department to address the long-term issues. You saw just a week or two ago, we had a press conference with the FBI and many other federal agencies on long-term fentanyl, gun, and gang violence investigations. Our violent crime is down substantially this year, and this is in a big way due to the amount of resources that we've been able to leverage in this area, because it is a serious issue and a serious concern in our community. And so when we've had the resources and when we leverage them, we're able to be effective. And so we are looking at every opportunity to address this across the city. New ideas. We're constantly in conversations with our colleagues across the law enforcement profession. You see, we're one of the few agencies that has expanded mental health workers in our comm center. So those are just some of the examples of things that we've done in the past. Last council, City Manager Christian Clegg talked about some new emphasis that was coming with a new impact team. I'm not sure that it's going to be a new impact team. It may actually be detectives, but we are working now to use some of the growth of the department to have some new resources to devote specifically to our businesses and our commercial centers and our developments across the city who are really seriously suffering from a high level of crime. Those new resources are really going to be heavily focused on these commercial centers and the businesses to reduce our response times so that we're getting there quickly, providing a much higher level of service to these types of crimes. And we're also getting engaged in the offenses, in the investigation of them in a much more timely manner, which can lead to some success in ultimately reducing these crimes as well. We're going to be leveraging some technology. We're going to be coming to the council with a request to increase security partnerships, because they are going to be a key part of our strategy to interrupt and disrupt what is a really difficult environment around many of our commercial centers. And the cleanup teams are going to play another part of that. More information is coming soon on that, but those are some new things that are coming with additional resources to the police department, as well as other resources provided by the council.
Thank you, Chief. I full-heartedly support all of those efforts, and I'm really encouraged to hear your planning, and want to just commend you and encourage you to continue and to accelerate those efforts. And I think that might get to the heart of the real problem here, not only north of 24th Street, but all over downtown, and frankly, like I said, all over the city. I want to turn to City Manager Clegg for just a moment. Thank you, Chief. What is the scope of this agreement for the public?
Councilmember Gonzalez, this agreement provides funding that allows the Downtown Business Association, by subcontract to a security firm, to hire additional staff to expand a pilot that was done, that DBA had done in the downtown core, to provide a more intensive security presence in 2 zones of the downtown area.
And what are those 2 zones?
There's one zone that's more in the downtown core, and I have to apologize for not having the precise boundaries, but it's in the. Oh, thank you, Paul.
So the first area is between 19th and 18th Street, between Chester and H, Wall Street Alley between Chester Avenue to H Street, I Street between 18th and 20th. And there is a map showing these areas in the attachment to the agreement. And then the second area is patrol on F Street between 24th and Golden State Highway.
Okay. Question regarding liability. Will these officer or security agents be carrying firearms?
It's our understanding that some of the security guards for this firm are authorized and certified to carry handguns, and others are not. It's a percentage of their staff.
And so if there is a security guard incident, officer involved, shooting, and someone potentially is injured or killed, God forbid, who would be ultimately liable? And perhaps Ms. Gennaro can help us with this. Is it the DBA? Is it their board? Is it the businesses that participate? Is it the city?
Thank you, Councilmember Gonzalez. Again, my guess is on a hypothetical like that we would all be involved in a lawsuit. Okay. And certainly I think with the motion in front of you, it's going to allow my office to add some additional insurance requirements, so that subcontractor will add the mayor and the city as an additional named insured under the O&A agreement. So I feel reasonably confident that we're protecting the city as much as possible.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you to the both of you for answering. Just a few last points, and then I also have a motion to take up. Just again, from a policy perspective, I believe that if we do have enhanced security such as this, in a defined geographical area, that doesn't eliminate the problem of crime within downtown. All it does is potentially displace it to a few blocks away. And so we'll have additional issues with businesses and property owners who will see potential increases. We know that there are issues of crime throughout the city of Bakersfield, not just downtown. And I wonder if we're prepared to provide grants or other incentives or other funding to entities to enhance private security in those areas, in the Auto Mall, in MLK Boulevard, in Northwest Promenade, Stockdale and California, Union Avenue. Are we prepared to do that, Mr. Clegg?
Councilmember, I'll answer that question in two ways. One, I do believe, again, as written in our current economic opportunity area guidelines, that we would require this at a minimum from an organized business district association. But as this is a very high priority in the city, if other associations are organized and request those services, we would review those through the same EOA application process we did this initial one. And I think it is reasonable to consider that. However, I would state that, as the Chief pointed out, we're looking to provide a much more robust private security support contract to the police department that would cover the many commercial areas throughout the city, and do feel that will have benefit and value from a citywide approach. Whereas this is more of an extension of an existing pilot program until we have a broader program in place at the city.
Okay, and the ARPA funds that we're talking about, those are really targeted and intended for disadvantaged neighborhoods. And so, violent crime and priority one calls are prevalent in many of our disadvantaged neighborhoods throughout the city. Many of our children and families live in those communities. They go to bed at night in neighborhoods that are plagued with violence. Are we providing security, private security to those families?
We are not through ARPA funds.
Okay. So I think there are a number of issues with this grant, and I appreciate all my friends from the DBA, and I applaud their efforts and the self-funding of this private security, which I think is most appropriate. I think we should explore a property-based improvement district, some other mechanism to allow for the property owners and business owners to participate. Perhaps the city can participate at that level as well. But there are some questions I'd like to see us feather out there. So I'm going to move that we actually move this item to our Safe Neighborhoods Committee for additional consideration, and that's my motion.
Thank you, Councilmember Gonzalez. Councilmember Parlier, I know you're having some technical difficulties, so we'll call on you next, please.
Thank you, Mayor. Well, as initially presented under the EOA, I understand the optics of it, and I don't necessarily think that those funds, as they were set up, were necessarily proper for this type of grant. But now that that funding is pivoted and is under ARPA, look, we all need extra security in some areas. Downtown Business Association has struggled, there's no doubt. I know in the past we used some CDBG funds for 3 extra police officers as a stopgap measure for the downtown area, and now that we're not doing that, some of the comments that were brought up, maybe some of those funds in the future can be used for added security or law enforcement or some other protective measure. But now that those funds are under ARPA, I intend to support. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Parlier. Councilmember Gray.
Thank you, Mayor. I also would say that I'm going to support this. The thing that grabbed me, I spent some time with the Downtown Business Association, and first of all, let's realize that the money is only being filtered through them. It's not staying in their account. It's going out to the businesses. So the Downtown Business Association is not receiving these funds for themselves. So I did, let's make that clear. But the other thing is, I spent a couple hours with them last week or the week before, and the things that are going on downtown right now, I literally was shocked. I mean, while I'm sleeping at night in my comfortable bed, I can't believe what these business owners are putting up with and had to put up with. Being in business myself, if my windows were being broken on a regular basis and people were coming into my business on District Boulevard, it'd be very difficult. So I want to commend you all that you've got the courage and the fortitude to stay where you are and continue to fight the fight. But why I can support this funding, and the EOA funds, that was before me, so I didn't have a real understanding of those. But once, I would have supported anyway. But anyway, you have been a group of people that have taken the bull by the horn. You've invested your own money. You didn't come to the city first for a handout. You said, what can we do to solve our issue before you ever came to the city? And that impressed me a whole lot, that you all took the initiative to try to fight your battle. But if we lose our downtown area, that's kind of the heartbeat of any city. And you can see what's happened in cities all over this country, that they're losing their inner city. And Bakersfield is not that big. We need to protect our city. And so I am in total favor of, I appreciate you all coming tonight. And I think it's going to be a good way to start warding off. And I really appreciated what our chief was talking about tonight and the strategy that he and his staff are putting together for businesses all over this city. So thank you, Chief Terry. Good job for what you guys are doing.
Thank you, Councilmember Gray. Councilmember Smith.
Thank you, Mayor. I'm a little confused. I mean, what's on the agenda, what we told the public was we were going to vote on an economic opportunity area incentive program. But now that's off the table and we're not voting on an EOA, we're voting on how to spend ARPA funds?
Councilmember Smith, members of the council, that's a very good question, and my office did contemplate whether or not this was within the four corners of the Brown Act and permissible. We came to the conclusion that it is, because when you look at it, there's really three components here. One is a contract with DBA, and as I understand the motion, that's still what you're voting on. Two, it's for a security system, and that's still what you're voting on. Three, it's $50,000 and nothing more. So really the next component is whether or not it takes place in the form of a grant, which is the EOA, or an ARPA, which, by the way, is also a grant. So we feel comfortable from a legal position that the public has been adequately informed through the Brown Act, and that you can move forward with the motion as stated.
It doesn't, I'm not comfortable with it. Thank you for your opinion. So the ARPA is still a grant to the DBA? So why would we not just hire the security people ourselves? Why does it flow through the DBA?
Councilmember Smith, I think there's a couple of different options, and it would be possible for us to provide security through a direct contract from the city. I think in this particular instance, the Downtown Business Association has a model where they're intricately involved with the communication from the businesses to them as an important contact, and in direct communication with the security company, and so it was their proposal to bring forward a way to fund this and continue to stay deeply engaged with it, as opposed to the city really taking ownership of the contract with the security firm and the oversight of the security firm. So there are different ways to do it. You're correct; it could be done a different way, but this is the proposal from the Downtown Business Association.
So there's the reason I didn't hear, but the reason it moved off of the EOA areas because we weren't comfortable with. I mean, as Mr. Maxwell mentioned, maybe that's not really the purpose of EOA. Is it?
Candidly, Councilmember Smith, that was a recommendation by the Vice Mayor making the motion, and so I don't have a strong reason to change the funding source. Although I can say both are eligible funding sources.
And on the ARPA funds, we have hundreds of thousands of dollars that we could spend on things like this, millions of dollars. Where if other people wanted to use this for ARPA money?
We have set aside $1 million for business district revitalization. We've set aside $4 million for economic development, and some of those monies from the $4 million will go into additional, actually, EOA, the 7 different EOAs. Some of those monies will go into the 7 EOAs as proposed to council. And so there are significant funds for business district revitalization is the broad category. But as I stated earlier, I think if we were to see an influx of requests, we would point folks to our ultimate goal of providing private security contracts that cover our commercial areas. but we're, a few months away from that, and this is a short-term solution to continue a program until that's in place.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm not comfortable with changing in midstream here. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Smith. Vice Mayor.
Thank you, Mayor. Melanie, could you come up and speak for just a little bit?
Hello,
Welcome.
everybody.
Hello. She needs to state her name.
Go ahead and state your name.
Oh, okay. Melanie Farmer. I'm the president and CEO of the Downtown Business Association.
Okay, so tell me about downtown business. What's going on downtown?
Okay, as you see here, we have quite a few of our downtown businesses in the audience here that I called in, not a majority of them, some of our block captains. We have a lot of crime in our downtown area. We have a lot of mental issues, people with mental issues that just yesterday we had a guy with a chainsaw that they had to take down and call the police to come pick up. I mean, so many issues of crime and abuse and violence. We had Mama Roombas. Waitress was coming in to go to work, and this crazy guy just grabs her and throws her to the ground. Luckily, O&A Security was there in the area and took care of it before it got worse with other people. The crime is out of control and just getting worse, just as time goes by.
So does that happen often?
Daily, yeah.
So we did have security out there. Is it West Tech? Is that the?
You have Transwest.
Transwest.
We asked.
So tell me how that worked.
We created our block-to-block program, and we have worked through our businesses to request what we need for our downtown area. And private security was one of them, and we asked for it 4 years ago. And with that proposal, they put out an RFP, and Transwest got the private security contract. So we decided as a group, as our governing board, through our block-to-block and our downtown businesses, to see if that worked for us. But we have come to Andre and a few other people and let them know that this does not work for our downtown businesses. Our downtown businesses have reported that they do not see them. They aren't able to call them. With O&A Security, they are able to call O&A Security, and they're already in the area, so they're able to help them in a short amount of time, to where it takes the police a little bit longer to get there. O&A works directly with the police department in other matters as well, especially in the bar district and at nighttime, and is really taking care of a lot of issues, which we've worked directly with Chief Terry on. For that area, and it's just worked wonders to where Transwest does not do that, is not able to do that. They're not able to have contact. So with O&A, our businesses are extremely happy. The customers coming downtown are happy. We have the Padre, Jennifer, who's on our board, where they were too afraid to send their clientele down to the restaurants and bars, to where now they do, because the O&A is there, so there's presence there. And that's what we're pushing, is presence. We need presence of people pushing them along, and yeah, it pushes them into a different area, but eventually our plan is to be able to cover this in the entire downtown area with this plan. And then what it would be was it's pushing them out of the area and having presence. And just the presence alone deters them from doing some of the nasty things that they do.
Okay, thank you. Thank you.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Chief?
Well, I want to thank all of you too. Thank you for all considering this, and thank you for helping us as you have in the years past. Thank you.
Thank you. Chief, could you come forward again, please? So we have West Tech and we have O&A. Are they equal? I mean, you get the same service out of both of them?
Currently, we're under contract with Transwest. They are both security companies. The scope of work that we've asked Transwest to do and what they are providing through the police department is not the same scope of work. Melanie's correct in that businesses in the areas that Transwest is working don't have the ability to directly call Transwest officers who are on duty. That communication is directly through the police department. So that is a difference in the scope of work between the two companies and what they're doing now. In terms of their authority, I mean, it's the same. They're both security guards and have all of those same qualifications. One, those that are carrying firearms certainly have a higher level of certification and probably some training as well. I think Transwest, in the services that they're providing to us, do not detain people. It is an observe and report service that they're providing to us, which again, I think is different than what O&A has been contracted to do.
And so I talked to you earlier, but maybe you could just go through our conversation about O&A and your experience with them and what they do and if they're doing it well or...
Yeah, as I said earlier, our staff has had good experiences with them and coordination with them in the areas that we've worked with them downtown and have nothing negative to say at all in our work with them.
Okay, thank you. Christian, a question for you. So if this passed tonight, would it prevent other council members from doing the same thing in their ward?
No, council member, it would not.
Okay. So they could, if they needed a security service in their area, they could apply for grants and do the same thing?
Under our current guidelines, correct.
Okay. And if I wanted to go into Ward 4 and put one of these in, would that be appropriate?
Again, under our current guidelines, that's allowed.
I could do that?
I mean, any council member could work with an applicant. I think the practice has been a deference to ward council members to be sponsors, but yes, you could.
So not likely to happen?
Probably.
Probably not. Okay. So this really is to see if this is going to work, and it's not something we want to do to the whole. We just don't want to go out and blanket the whole city. We couldn't do that right now anyway. But if we had resources to do that, we could go out and blanket the whole city. We can't do that right now. And if this goes through, which I assume it will, and it passes and it's successful, is that something we could try to clone to other areas of the city?
Yeah, council member, vice mayor, for what it's worth as well, we've already been meeting with the Downtown Business Association to understand how this pilot is working, so that as we acquire these additional private security services in this coming year that we talked about at the last workshop we had on homelessness and public safety, that we recognize that different commercial centers need different levels of service. And so I think Valley Plaza or Auto Mall would probably have a little different need of service than downtown, but wanting to look specifically at the security needs. And if we determine that having a more presence and security firm that can be available for a quick phone call, we would integrate that into our private security model that is serving citywide efforts.
So we could actually expand this into other parts of the city?
Correct.
And each council member could ask for that?
Correct.
Okay, thank you. So we have an opportunity to do something about crime. It's before us here. It's before us tonight. And for us just to look away because we have some questions, I haven't heard any substantial question. Tonight's the night to do this. And it's got to be done if we're ever going to start pushing back on crime in this area. It needs to happen, and it needs to happen now. Thank you.
Thank you, Vice Mayor. Councilmember Arias.
Thank you, Mayor. I was not expecting this much conversation about this item tonight. I'll be frank. A couple questions, though, for you, Paul, if you don't mind coming up. Can you remind the council and the public what the purpose of the EOA funds are?
So the general purpose of the EOA funds is to provide improvements for businesses within the EOA designated areas. There are also provisions in the EOA program to provide support for workforce expansion. There's also provisions in there to provide rental assistance for expanding businesses. And then there's this provision here that to provide private security or consider private security for business association application.
So you can correct me if I'm wrong, but my initial understanding before tonight was always that this pot of funding, this program, was dedicated to creating jobs and spurring economic development. Is that correct?
In its general sense, it was to create economic opportunity and development within the designated areas.
Has the public safety component always been a part of the criteria and the guidelines in the EOA program?
I can't address if it's always been, since I've been working with this program just for the year and a half, but I would reflect that it would be part of that element as it's currently constituted.
Yeah, absolutely. I don't mean to make it seem as though, you know, the safety of the business and the safety of customers while they're utilizing this business is not important. It absolutely is. But I want to be very careful about how we distribute and allocate these dollars. These dollars are limited. So it was said that any council member tonight could potentially work with an applicant to, you know, shepherd some of these dollars to do the very same thing in their ward. Can you tell me, does every ward have an EOA?
I don't believe
area?
there's a EOA in every ward, and to provide some clarification there, Councilmember, the application for the use of this funds in this way would have to be done by an organized and recognized business association. So that's one of the criteria that's part of that.
Got it. I appreciate that. I think that the best way to stop a bullet is by providing a job. And I think that I'm very protective over these types of dollars because I think there's so much opportunity to create those additional opportunities for people to get a job. And I think it underscores some of the, you know, prior conversation that I think I've had with you, that I know that I've had with staff, about the need for creating a separate fund, a distinct fund that will help support our businesses who are struggling with safety challenges, right? Whether that means that you need a wrought iron gate in front of your business, you know, there should be some opportunity for the city to help them purchase that. I think the same thing for security cameras. I've had dozens of conversations with businesses, nonprofits, homeowners, churches even in Ward 1 who are looking for that additional support. But I fear that, you know, similar to what my colleagues have pointed out, I fear that if we open the floodgates now, there will be more applications, there will not be enough funding. And so I appreciate the idea of moving it over to ARPA. I think it's a much better allocation. But where do we draw this line as leaders? Where do we say enough is enough? This person can get it, this organization can get it, but this one can't. I think we have to be data-driven. I think we have to look and measure the needs. Ward 1 is home to just about the most concentrated crime in the entire city of Bakersfield. And I think that we must take a look at those needs and make an educated and data-driven analysis of how we should spend those funds. So tonight, I want to, you know, support Councilmember Gonzalez and invite this conversation back to the Safe Neighborhoods Committee. I think we should take a look at not only what sort of criteria we're using in allocating these funds, but also consider this allocation from ARPA funding for these purposes. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Arias. Councilmember Gonzalez.
Thank you, Mayor, I'm going to amend my motion tonight, and I'm going to say, given this new revelation that somehow we can allow any entity to come out and apply for ARPA funding from the city, and we can take it up on a moment's notice, which is new to me. I was assuming that we would, and my many conversations with the city manager and with Mr. Saldana have been that we were going to craft programs, guidelines, and then request specific calls for proposals, which I think is a better public policy and better practice for any city. But given the fact that things have changed tonight, I do want to ask, I want to make a motion that we direct staff to allocate $500,000 from ARPA for the need of, in the interest of developing programs that help small businesses and commercial corridors throughout the city to enhance security, along with approving this agreement tonight. That's my motion.
Excuse me, Mayor, Councilmember Gonzalez, I cannot have the council vote on that because the allocation of $500,000, of course, is not on the agenda tonight. But if you could clarify your earlier motion for me, I would appreciate it because you mentioned that you wanted something to go to committee, and I need to make a determination with the mayor as to whether or not that would negate Vice Mayor's motion.
And if I may as well, in as much as we can't take action on the allocation, I think we can take a referral to bring back an item related to ARPA for that funding allocation.
Yeah, my motion wasn't to allocate the funding directly now, but was to direct staff to identify the appropriate funds, either from ARPA or additional funding sources.
And again, Councilmember Gonzalez, and so could you finish that line of thought then? So you want staff to identify the $500,000 as to those security issues, and then what does it do for the item on tonight's agenda?
Along with approving tonight's item.
Okay.
Madam City Attorney, anything further?
No, Mayor, I just want to make
Thank you.
sure that your colleagues understand
Yes.
that if they want a separate vote, that they need to ask Councilmember Gonzalez for that.
Clear? You have a motion? Councilmember? Okay, then, all right. Councilmember Gonzalez.
Given the reality that there are many issues throughout the city, and many businesses and commercial corridors also have issues with crime, it is very clear to me that I'm going to, tomorrow morning, receive calls from property owners on MLK Boulevard, property owners in Old Town Kern, who are going to ask for similar grant proposals. I would like to direct staff to identify funding, $500,000 to start, to initiate a program so that we can fund additional security programs in other commercial corridors. California and Stockdale is another good example, along with approving tonight's agreement. The agreement with the DBA for $50,000 that will be funded through ARPA.
Aren't you really amending his motion? You're adding to it.
Could I say something, please? Maybe it would help us all. Okay, if you're already in the point where you would agree to my motion, just pull yours back, and then we'll vote on that afterwards. Because I have another motion I'm going to make to send this to Budget and Finance, the EOA.
Okay. I guess from my perspective, it is a question of good public policy for the city of Bakersfield. And I don't believe this particular grant on its own in itself is good public policy for the city.
Okay, but you just said that you would vote for that and then yours. So if we vote for mine and you recommend to staff to set up this policy, my other motion is to send the EOA into Budget and Finance.
There's really no difference. So I'm going to keep my motion and I'd like to proceed forward.
Councilmember Parlier.
Thanks, Mayor. Maybe we're talking a little bit of semantics here, Andre, but I think it's cleaner if we bifurcate and just bring yours separately. I don't think there's necessarily a problem with it.
Okay. If it makes it easier, then I'll make this separate. I'll make a separate motion I'll amend my motion for the fourth time, I think. And my motion is to direct staff to develop a program for property owners in commercial corridors and to identify funding up to $500,000 to fund that program.
Thank you. Madam City Attorney, can you just recap where we're at? Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Parlier. My understanding is that the last motion, which you're going to vote on, which is next, is coming from Councilmember Gonzalez. And again, it's a referral to staff, directing staff to identify funding up to $500,000 to initiate a similar security program that I believe that the council is going to pass tonight in reference to DBA. And I did not hear, Councilmember Gonzalez, that you're referring it to a committee. You are specifically directing staff as a whole. Is that correct, sir?
That's correct, yes.
Once you vote on that, council, we will then go to Vice Mayor Weir's motion. My understanding that motion, at least his first motion, is to approve the grant agreement with DBA with direction to staff to incorporate some additional language that is required under ARPA, as well as to add some city standard insurance requirements and any other non-substantive changes, with the understanding that if the DBA has any objection to those changes, that agreement be brought back to council for consideration. So again, first is Councilmember Gonzalez's motion, which is the referral and direction to staff. Please.
Thank you. Anything further, Councilmember Parlier?
I'm good. Thanks, Mayor.
Councilmember Gray.
So with our Councilmember Gonzalez's motion, that $500,000, doesn't it need to be made clear that when it comes to staff to try to be able to identify those funds, that those funds still have to fall within the guidelines of what Mr. Sadana has told us, that it has to be an actual business association and not just individual businesses. So can we clarify on that?
My understanding, Councilmember Gray, with your colleague's motion is that is not on the table at this time. It's really just a broad directive to staff to develop this $500,000 program and bring it back to you. It's not an allocation. It's just it's a developmental stage.
Okay.
And Mr. Saldani was referring to the EOA program, but this funding could come from ARPA, which is a different funding source with a different program criteria.
Okay. So just a question for me to understand, why is this not just coming to you as a referral instead of as a motion?
Councilmember Gray, it is coming as a referral, but sometimes it is appropriate when there's controversy amongst the dais that a council member make the referral as a motion, and I think it would be absolutely appropriate to do that.
Okay.
Councilmember Arias.
Thank you, Mayor. I had a question of Vice Mayor Weir. You had mentioned that you were going to make an additional motion. Is that to send this particular allocation to the DBA back to committee, or is this for something else?
No, my motion to the DBA is a separate motion.
Got it. Okay, thank you.
I don't see any other requests to speak. We are voting on Councilmember Gonzalez's motion. You have a motion? Please cast your votes.
Motion is unanimously approved.
And now, Councilmember Weir. Another motion, the motion that he made. You have a motion? Please cast your votes.
Motion is unanimously approved.
Okay, now I think I still have the table. Okay. Second motion is to make a motion to approve. Nope. Second motion, I would like to refer and ask Budget and Finance Committee to review the guidelines for how EOA grant funds may be used by program applicants.
I don't see any requests to speak. You have a motion?
I have one.
Councilmember Gonzalez.
I appreciate the motion. I thought that referral was already made and was coming to Budget and Finance Committee.
Great, Councilmember Gonzalez. The next meeting of the Budget and Finance Committee is November 28th, I believe, and we are taking up the topic of EOA guidelines.
Yeah. Thank you. So I don't believe there's a need for the motion.
I leave that up to Vice Mayor.
Okay.
Okay, so what are we taking up in Budget and Finance? Because I'm not aware of that.
In Budget and Finance, we'll be reviewing what are the current EOA guidelines with the committee and receiving committee feedback on those guidelines. I would note for the benefit of the council that council has adopted a resolution that establishes the EOA program, and there are certain high-level policy statements in that resolution. Many of the detailed guidelines are at the administrative level, but we did, based on a formal referral, schedule this to come to Budget and Finance just to review what are the eligibilities and guidelines within the EOA and discuss that at the committee level.
So in your opinion, there's no reason for a motion here?
You know, I would agree that we're going to take this up anyway. Again, as the city attorney noted earlier, at times to provide very clear direction, a motion could be appropriate. But in this instance, it is very clear to me that we'll be taking this topic up in that conversation.
Okay, I withdraw my motion.
Thank you, Councilmember Vice Mayor. Let's take an 8-minute break, and then we'll return for the next session. Okay, let's continue. Madam Clerk, next item, please.
9, hearings.
Our next item is public hearings. Each side will be allowed 15 minutes. It's 15 minutes for all speakers per side. It's important that you identify yourself and make your statement succinctly so others may speak. We'll hear statements from those opposed to the project, then we'll hear from those who would like to speak in favor of the project. If there's testimony on both sides, each side will be allowed a 5-minute rebuttal. There's a clock on the TV screens behind me, which indicates 15 minutes. Please step to the microphone and identify yourself. After 14 minutes, a yellow light will come on. At the end of 15 minutes, a red light will flash indicating your time is up. Quickly end your statement. You may ask questions during your statement, but they won't be addressed until the public hearing is closed. If you have written comments that are longer than your verbal statement, give them to the clerk. She'll provide copies to the council. Please be courteous to others who wish to speak. Madam Clerk, please read the public hearing item.
Public hearing item 9A, public hearing to consider zone change number 22-0097 and a planned development review 22-0332 on 20 acres located at the northeast corner of Noriega Road and Old Farm Road. Applicant is McIntosh and Associates, representing property owner Finley Park Properties, LLC.
Thank you. Mr. Clegg.
Thank you, Mayor Go and Council. Our Planning Director, Paul Johnson, has a summary for this item.
Thank you, Honorable Mayor, Council members. Paul Johnson, City Planning Director. This project, 20 gross acres, 18 net acres, located on the northeast corner of Old Farm and Noriega Road. There's 2 requests before you. The first is a zone change from exclusive residential to limited multifamily residential. And the second is for a planned development review for 134 dwelling units in a gated community. Some of the amenities in this community will be a gym, swimming pool, spa, open space. The units will be a duplex design, 2 to 3 bedrooms, just over 1,000 square feet. The Planning Commission considered this item in mid-September. There was no oppositions, and so they made a unanimous recommendation that your council approve this project. Therefore, it is staff's recommendation that you make a motion to approve the zone change and plan development review. And that completes my presentation.
Thank you. And at this time, item 9A is open. Is there anyone who'd like to speak in opposition to the project? Please come to the microphone, identify yourself, and proceed. Seeing none, is there anyone who wishes to speak in favor of the project? Please come to the microphone, identify yourself, and proceed. Seeing none, I'll close the public hearing and return it to council for comment and action. Councilmember Smith.
I will keep this one short and move to approve.
You have a motion. Please cast your votes.
Mayor Go, I'm going to conduct a roll call vote.
Thank you.
Vice Mayor Weir,
Yes.
Councilmember Arias,
Aye.
Councilmember Gonzalez,
Aye.
Councilmember Smith,
Yes.
Councilmember Freeman,
Aye.
Councilmember Gray, Councilmember Parlier.
Aye.
Motion is unanimously approved.
Thank you. Madam Clerk, next item, please.
Reports item 10A. Staff has provided a staff memorandum transmitting presentation on this item.
Mr. Clegg.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. This is in response to a recent council referral, and Brianna Carrier, our assistant to the city manager, will walk through a brief presentation on the topic.
Welcome.
Thank you. Good evening, Honorable Mayor, members of the City Council. Again, Brianna Carrier, assistant to the city manager, and out of our office, I help coordinate the Clean City Initiative. So we'll start again with where this report is coming from. This came from a referral from your August 31st meeting, a referral from Councilmember Andre Gonzalez to address attractive nuisances within the downtown core. We're talking about dumpsters. And requested staff to develop a dumpster enclosure policy and an incentive program for property owners and business owners within 90 days. So coming back to you within that time frame. The point for tonight is actually to seek council direction. We have some recommendations for you and want to see if we're heading on the right path. But I do want to start with what we currently have on the books for the Bakersfield Municipal Code currently as it stands. So at this point, we're not proposing any ordinance changes or updates. Section 8.32120 in this section is on health and safety and solid waste. Collection points for discarded material. So this is an existing ordinance dating back even to 1994. The city manager or designee may require an enclosed structure around containers if an unenclosed container is determined to be unsightly. So that was one of the requests for more secure trash enclosures to try and get rid of that nuisance. Other sections that are relevant to the discussion tonight include on inspections and investigation. So per chapter 1.40, which is our general administrative process of this code, these powers include the power to issue administrative citations, the power to assess and collect civil fines and penalties as provided in this chapter. And finally, this last one, which we'll also ask for direction on tonight also, is enforcement. The enforcement officer, city manager, and/or designee shall supervise the collection and removal of all discarded materials by the city and shall enforce the provisions of this chapter. So again, we have some pretty strong language in the Muni Code right now, not currently seeking any updates to that. Wanted to give a little bit of background on some other efforts the city has undertaken to try and alleviate the issue of illegal dumping, litter throughout the city, truly. For the downtown area, we do have a contract with the Downtown Street Ambassadors, which is a program contracted out of the Open Door Network. So for the most part, these are all homeless participants. It's a good workforce development program for downtown as well, and they're frequently called to also address nuisance and unkempt dumpsters. In addition to some of our ongoing projects like the Downtown Street Ambassadors and our Clean Cities teams, we also underwent a gravity lock pilot project, and this was done in 2021. So 7 locations have these gravity bars. It's a little hard to see on the photo there, but essentially those are not supposed to be able to be opened unless they are actually being serviced. We do have some lessons learned from that program there. Of the 7 locations, for the most part, when we had great cooperation and maintenance from our business owners, they do generally work. It does take a lot of attention and a lot of coordination with employees as well. But some things that we're learning from this pilot project and the use of this particular device is generally the maintenance of them. So we have seen if owners or anybody really are overloading the dumpsters, if they are not closing them, if they're leaving the lids up, locks, if locks are being cut, you'll have to expect to replace some of those. The plastic bins themselves can be bent, in some cases melted. And then, of course, if somebody can't actually get into the dumpster, leaving illegal dumping on the side or on top of the dumpster has also been an issue. That being said, again, this type of device, generally effective and cost-effective. Estimate conservatively is about $500 to install, and when it's maintained properly, can help deter that type of illegal dumping that we see. Another kind of final lesson learned here is that we're only recommending steel lids on this type of device moving forward. Just some examples of ways that we have learned these lessons with the different approaches we have tried. What you see here also are some overloaded dumpsters. There is not going to be a great cookie cutter way to do trash enclosures citywide, just because of the unique circumstances of the way different parts of town are developed. For example, some of these are in the right-of-way and there's not space for them. So we'll approach that as we get more into the policy. Just some examples of other city-owned dumpsters. This is a property city-owned on Stockdale Highway. Lesson learned here is that the opaque doors and steel-reinforced doors are really the way we want to go. This is kind of a tale here on another city-owned property where we had 2 bin space. Initially tried to do a chain link enclosure and pretty elaborate, even raising the roof, raising the top of that dumpster area, learning that the chain link really just gets peeled back. People climbing on top or peeling back or cutting it and taking it. Graduated even from there to wrought iron. So I wish I do actually have a better photo of it, but the one sort of in the middle there is the wrought iron enclosure, which has both wrought iron on the front gates as well as the top. Even with those best efforts, what you see here is actually somebody has cut that wrought iron as well. But we have been learning along the way that some of these other approaches that we've tried, they're just, not going to cut it for us. So we're going to be looking at these best practices moving forward. And finally here, this is actually at City Hall, a photo our employee sent to us, which again, those plastic bins, the lids they're not foolproof. Just have the expectation that you're going to see some vandalism for people who are truly persistent to be getting into these dumpsters. So this one does have the gravity lock. The lock is on there. However, somebody has peeled that back and rifled around in there a bit. This is where we're seeking direction from council on how we approach this issue. So ultimately, want to do a 3-tiered approach, kind of some progressive different approaches here, starting with education, moving to applying those gravity locks, and then also choosing the enclosures that make the most sense, doing those really strategically. Underlying all of that, again, is the enforcement, and that's something we'll also need some direction on, because to date, historically, we have not done very strong enforcement for things like nuisance dumpsters at this point. A little framework language underneath there as well is that we would like to utilize the existing EOA framework. And part of the reason for that also is to make sure that this is a business improvement for them, so that this is essentially being granted that lock, and then it being their responsibility to maintain from there. The funding would actually not be EOA funding. So the funding can come out of the county land use fee. So they increase their land use fee. We get an annual allocation of about $1.5 million. And the usage for that has to center around education, eradication, and enforcement. So this could be one of the types of programs that we use that funding for. It is reliable, it will be ongoing. But we do also have some other projects that we'll be using that funding for. Okay. Again, just going a little bit more into the approach that we would propose to take for applying this city resources for these businesses in EOA areas. First of all, Tier 1 education is just needed citywide. So for business owners to understand what currently is in the municipal code, what their responsibilities are, and what city resources are out there. So potentially they could be eligible for this program. We'd want to make them aware. Tier 2 here would be starting with our gravity locks. So again, that's a relatively small investment that we could make. Allocate funding from our county fee money to administer through the EOA program. And one of the reasons going through EOA program as well is that they have staff capacity. That's something that we could utilize and get started relatively quickly. And that would be for granting businesses the gravity locks. I have down here at least, because this is relatively, we're having conversations with our local refuse companies. Ultimately, they would be the ones doing the install, doing the purchase of this. So it kind of also depends on their capacity, but generally we think we could start with at least 100 of these locks in this eligible area. From there, Tier 3 would be for those locations that have demonstrated an effort to try and maintain their dumpsters and understand their responsibilities, allocating $250,000 of that county fee money to go towards actually case by case building these trash enclosures. Again, some of these locations are going to be a little bit easier to approach if they have the right of way, if they're in areas where we can still service them. Conservatively, there are potentially 5 to 8 locations, but I have bolded here that we could get a lot farther, making sure that this is a reimbursement program if the businesses are able to find a quote that works for them at their location. So again, having a staff-selected approach, understanding that we know where some of our chronic areas are, we know where it would be a little bit easier to actually construct them. And generally also some of that requirement being a cost match. So we do want to require some sort of investment from the business as well. Also taking all of those lessons learned, all of the things that we have learned in our own properties and making sure that that's a minimum specification specifically for this program, for the illegal dumping and for the trash enclosure program. And also just another requirement for accountability is requiring a maintenance plan. So do their staff understand how to use them? Do they know how, what days they're being serviced? That sort of thing. Wanted to give an example and appreciate Parks for sending me this photo today. This is actually a newer enclosure that has just been installed at Beal Park. So this kind of takes into account all of those best practices that we've learned, reinforced doors, raw iron roof on top of this as well. So this is in Beal Park. This is a 1-bin enclosure. This one is in Jefferson Park. Does not have that roof on there, but does have the opaque doors. This one is in Siemens Park. So this one is actually a 2-bin, so the larger, and has all of those other components that we saw as well. For something like a city park where we have, our park space to use this, where we know it's our staff who are maintaining this, pretty good program to go through. Okay, so that would be that 3-tiered approach. That underlying approach is also enforcement. So again, to date, we have not really had a strong push to enforce for unkempt dumpsters for business owners and also for multifamily as well. Generally, this enforcement is needed citywide. This is not just something that is in an EOA area. There is discussion. Another bucket that we could use that county funding for would be for illegal dumping enforcement. So we have had some discussions with code enforcement funding a dedicated special projects code enforcement officer with equipment, and potentially this could be something that would go under their scope as well. And that process would follow our current administrative citation, though that would be something that can still be in development. Generally, what we're asking for here is, are we comfortable with moving forward with that approach, with the understanding that potentially if we are doing an escalating progressive enforcement on businesses, it may start with something like education, which we're going to do anyway. It could move on to warning letters, and then from there going through an administrative process and potentially actually using that part in the Muni Code where we would require a business to build their own dumpster enclosure. So just some final thoughts and discussion here is just setting expectations, which again, we know that there are some maintenance issues with the dumpster gravity logs, that they're not going to solve everything. They're not going to solve behavior, and they're not going to solve how persistent people can be, but that we have to try something. That is something that business owners need. They are still suffering from the litter and things that are attracting things to their business places. I would also recommend, when doing this type of program, making sure that we are building an evaluation at the beginning of the program. So comparing this with our Clean City data, this is something that we actually have really good, robust data for from our Clean City teams who are responding to these problem areas daily, on a daily basis. Making sure that we are evaluating compliance. So if there's a way to hold business owners also accountable and working with them to make sure that they understand how to maintain this type of program, and also code compliance. So continuing to work with code enforcement in solid waste. Finally here as well is that there are a lot of similar initiatives like this happening right now. I would want to continue to partner with the Downtown Street Ambassadors for other programs to help with this issue. Other community groups similar in the downtown area. Other city initiatives. For example, Keep Bakersfield Beautiful. They also have a portion of this county fee money that they're going to use for marketing for an anti-litter campaign, and potentially partnering with them also to help business owners understand their responsibilities for their dumpsters as well. Even have had conversations with staff who have underwent the recent shopping cart ordinance. So partnering with them on their education materials. There's a lot of opportunities here where we can get some co-benefits with some other things that the city is doing. And with that, a recommendation from staff is that City Council provide direction to see if this is what we have in mind, if we're moving in the right direction for this policy creation, and or comfort level with utilizing a code enforcement officer to actually start an enforcement approach when it comes to these unkempt and unsightly dumpsters.
And thank you, Brianna, for the presentation, and want to also give thanks to our solid waste team for their engagement with Brianna and thinking through the existing code and the options that we have in front of us. Just want to provide a little bit of clarity about what we're asking for tonight and what we're not asking for tonight, because we're not asking for a specific motion to fund at these particular levels. This is really a general feedback on our direction for this program. And a couple things are going to be coming back to council that would have formal action. And so we are actually due the county landfill fee that Ms. Carrier referenced. We're due to come back to the city council because we have to provide to the county our framework for how we're going to spend those dollars. And so in that action, we would have the specifics where council would authorize and say this much of that funding is going to go towards illegal dumping, this much is going to go towards education, this much is going to go towards a dumpster program. So those actions are pending in the future, but wanted to provide this information to council to just get some feedback, both on the direction that we're taking, as well as I noted, or as Brianna noted, we have the ability today under current code. We recognize quickly we don't necessarily need new code updates to take enforcement action here, but more of a heads up to the council that if we become more proactive in this area, that the businesses may that are have dumpsters that are challenging and problematic may start to get this education initially, and then hopefully some incentives, but ultimately could result in enforcement. And so part of that is an awareness that we would begin an education campaign to go down that path. And then lastly, I would say the majority of the specific actions are within our administrative authority to move on, particularly after we allocate that county landfill fee funding to the within that framework. But we're interested in, again, just council feedback. Are we designing a program that heads in the right direction? Last point is the enclosures. Wanted to note that the steel magnetic locking lids at $500 a lid, we can do a lot of lids. We can do a lot of dumpsters. Enclosures run from $25,000 to $50,000 per enclosure, and so that we feel like that was why we had the tiered approach. It needs to be a much more focused effort on the enclosures because it eats up that funding much quicker. I believe the number of dumpsters in the city is 1,900.
In the EOA areas.
Sorry, in the EOA areas is
Yes.
1,900. And we've already done some data analysis solid waste is familiar with those dumpsters that have a lot of complaints and a lot of service needs. And so we started there with the pilot, but our intent would be to follow that data initially in doing the education and the outreach and the incentives. But again, with those enclosures, we target it to where we have the biggest challenges and biggest issues because of the dollar amount. So again, your motion tonight would be actually to be receive and file, but we're looking for feedback about, are we headed in the right direction and some other considerations we can take back and refine for some ultimate action.
Thank you, Mr. Clegg. And thank you, Ms. Carrier. Councilmember Gonzalez.
Thank you, Mayor Go. Thank you, Brianna, and thank you to the Solid Waste Division for all the hard work in this program, in developing this presentation and some of these recommendations, and also for the pilot program from which we gleaned so many lessons that are important for us. This is a problem that has been a chronic nuisance for downtown Bakersfield for years, even preceding my time on the council. And so I'm very excited that we're able to take some steps forward. I also appreciate the evaluation piece. I think that's an important component. So again, kudos to you and your team for all of the effort in developing this. So with that, I really encourage us to, and I'd like to make a motion that directs staff to move forward with a dumpster enclosure incentive policy creation and enforcement approach. Thank you.
Councilmember Smith.
Thank you, Mayor. I had a couple questions. I thought I heard the term reimbursement, that the business was going to build the enclosure first and get reimbursed?
That's generally, I believe, how the EOA program works, yes. If they can have their own quote and build that, we would reimburse them for that as well.
And that's a $25,000 to $35,000.
Correct, council member. Well, correct, council member. Under the EOA guidelines, we do, and this is a recent update because we've noticed challenges in cash flow, that they are, if we followed the same pattern as EOAs, is that they would have 10% upfront cash to get them started, and then as they work, they can get reimbursements along the way so that they don't have to front the entire amount. But part of the intent, again, is to see that commitment and skin in the game, particularly under our code, that they are required to build those enclosures. That was the intent around that, instead of just providing it on a straight grant basis.
So, and the enclosures are all on, excuse me, private property? They're not in the alleys or on the streets?
It's a mix. And some sites are, it may be very difficult to even identify a place for an enclosure. There may be some sites you just can't fit it in.
Right.
In other areas, it could be on private property. In other areas, it may be in the right-of-way.
So if it's in the right-of-way, then they would still fund it?
I think that's a fair question. I think we'll take that back and work on that because typically you'd have to have an encroachment permit, but that makes it a pretty challenging process to ask somebody to go and do that and get reimbursements.
You need twice the money.
Correct. So I think we can take a hard look at that and see if there's another way around those right-of-way ones.
Okay, and I didn't understand the county money, EOA money, how much in each one? What are you looking at?
Yes, sorry, council member, and this is one of the dangers of trying to follow a good framework and a good pattern. So it's not EOA money at all. We're just saying use the same boundaries and the same process as EOA, but it's not an EOA. We've come up with a fairly systematic way of.
So they would still be grants, but it would come from the county money?
Correct.
Okay. In the EOA areas?
Correct, as proposed.
And the enclosures, how high is that roof?
That is a good question. Some of the designs can actually raise the dumpsters up, so if they are above 8 feet, that's technically considered a building. So that would actually be additional processes to have a building permit for something like that.
But the lid is 8 feet when it's up, right? it needs to be 8 feet or not?
Greg Strackless for the record. Those dumpsters are usually rolled out of their enclosures, pulled out, and then they're serviced.
Well, right, for service, but when the business is putting stuff into the dumpster, he's got to lift the lid up.
That's correct. Yeah, at
And he's
least
got to hold the
3
lid
3
if
feet.
it won't stay up, so.
Yeah.
I don't know what the height is, but it seems like it may be a problem if you get up too high.
Yeah,
That sounds like we'll take a look at that as well.
Okay, and last question. Did you get a feel for, you said there were 1,900, I think. How many problem ones?
Probably not throughout that full 1900. I think in some of the downtown core, Old Town Kern area, solid waste has a running list of known locations that are chronic
Is
issues.
that 50, 100, 300?
Oh, I think they could easily come up with one, but I can't speak for them.
But I will take an estimated guess, Councilmember. I would say the more problematic properties, we're talking probably about 2 or 3 dozen that we
Okay.
think would be, really great candidates for the first push.
Right.
But we do feel like, through all the EOA areas, we're probably talking about 50 or 100, locking lids that we'd want to do in the first year or two.
Okay, great. Yeah, I think it'd be great to clean them up. They're definitely a problem. Thank you.
If I could add some context, Councilmember Smith, as well, some of the intricacies with the problem locations are ones that are shared as well, so when they're shared
Right.
responsibility, so that's another consideration we'll have to take into
Yeah,
account.
the I Street one is, I go by every day, and it's
Yeah.
always a problem, I know. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Smith. Councilmember Parlier.
Thanks, Mayor. So I appreciate this referral, Andre. But I have a couple questions too. Besides the downtown approach to this, let me jump out. Areas outside of the downtown corridor. If it's new construction, looking at the packet regarding the current ordinances, if you have a new shopping center it goes in, is there a requirement that they have to have a locking container or anything, or locking bin area, or is it just open?
That is a great question, Councilmember Parley. Enclosures, I believe, are required, but the locking bins are not.
Okay. So on an enclosure, is it required that they have a locking enclosure?
We'll have to probably get back to you on that. I think that the answer is no.
So let me give you, while you're thinking about it, let me give you my thoughts on it. So there's some new shopping centers out in my area. Beautiful enclosures that have locks on them, but they're not being locked. And homeless are moving into them, especially as you get pressure from the downtown core, and they're going to move out to potentially other areas, especially other areas that have recycle centers fairly nearby. So I'd like to see some sort of, even if it's educational to begin with, that we, and if it takes a referral, let's say Legend Lit, to incorporate that into our code, then so be it. Do you have something to add here, City Manager?
Thank you, Councilmember. We're on the same page on that challenge and that need. And the current code gives us the ability to both educate and enforce on those individuals that have unkempt enclosures. And so if they have the systems to lock them, but they're not doing it and it's resulting in a mess, we have the ability to do that. And again, we think, particularly if we want to ramp up this program and come back and say, with some of these funds, let's create this incentive program as well as a code enforcement officer to go out and do the education and the outreach, then we can do that under this current proposal, citywide.
Okay. So I'd like to, just so we codify it, I'd like to make a referral to Legend Lit, that we look at this, that potentially we add something within code to say that, i.e. these not bin areas, but the storage areas have to have a securing mechanism, and maybe have a caveat if the property is behind a secured fence or something, let's say an industrial property or something, that they already have that essential security because they're fenced in. But that being said, that locking mechanism, and also if that becomes something that we look to maybe doing an additional application to our app, for some sort of unsecured bin or unsecured, bin storage location.
Councilmember Parley, through the mayor, do you mean the Rock Solid, the Bakersfield mobile app?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. I did want to add, this was a similar question I had asked of staff, and I was fighting with my Outlook a little bit, but I do have the refuse surface planning guide that was sent to me today, and I could send that to you if you're curious what our current specs are for development.
Well, since this is my last meeting, official meeting, I'd say don't worry about it.
Okay. If you're nostalgic.
But anyway, I think those are good additions, and Brianna, thanks for all your service.
Thank you, Councilmember Parlier. So you have a motion? Please cast your votes.
Motion is unanimously approved.
Thank you. And now, next item, please.
Deferred business item 11A. A blue memo has been provided regarding this item, transmitting correspondence received. This is deferred business item to consider general plan amendment zone change number 21-0184 on 56.86 acres generally located at the northwest corner of Hosking Avenue and South H Street. Applicant is Majestic Realty Company representing property owner 4JS and R LLC.
Mr. Clegg.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. Planning Director Paul Johnson again will provide a brief presentation to remind us of the context on this item and where we're at today as a deferred business item.
Honorable Mayor, council members, Paul Johnson, pleasure to be at the podium again. If I could get the other presentation, I would appreciate it. This project was last on your agenda 2 weeks ago. At that time, a full presentation was provided in regards to the project and the environmental document that was prepared. So tonight will be a truncated version of this project. It is located near the Hosking 99 interchange. The request is a general plan amendment and zone change from general commercial to industrial on 57 acres and general commercial to exclusive commercial on 34 acres. The environmental impact report prepared for this project analyzed 187,500 square feet of commercial use and over 1 million square feet of industrial use. At the last council meeting, there was a request by one of the council members for photo simulations of what the warehouse would look like. 3 of those were provided by the applicant, the first here being at the Berkshire and South H intersection. The second would be looking due west from South H at one of the entry points. And the third would be looking east from Highway 99. The council also requested a map showing where the 19 schools were located within the 2-mile radius of the site, which was analyzed in the Environmental Impact Report, or EIR. The closest is across Highway 99 to the west, but the closest on the side of the project would be just over half mile, and that is on Hosking Avenue, and you can see it's an elementary school, kind of on the southern edge. The Planning Commission considered this project in October. Following the public presentations, there was a unanimous recommendation that your council approve this request. As I mentioned in my opening remarks, your council considered this on November 2nd. At that time, there was a memorandum provided to your council transmitting 13 comments that were submitted just prior to that meeting. So therefore, during public presentations, the applicant had requested that following closure of the public hearing, that the project be continued to tonight's hearing in order to allow time to respond to those comments. The hearing was closed and continued to tonight. During that time, those comments were addressed, and that was attached to the admin report for your consideration. Additionally, the city clerk noted there was another memo provided tonight transmitting additional 5 comments. Those comments are similar, if not identical, to the previous comments, and staff believes those are adequately addressed, again, in the response that was attached to your admin report. Therefore, the Planning Commission and city staff recommend approval of this project. That completes my presentation.
Thank you, Mr. Johnson. Council members, any comments? Councilmember Parlier.
Thank you, Mayor. And Paul, maybe stay close. So before I make my comments, I just want to address something in consultation with the city attorney. During the break, I was approached by somebody from, I believe, the Labor Council, and very nice, very sweet person. But just out of abundance of caution, they tried to engage me on this item, and I just related that I couldn't talk about anything pending before the council to vote on until I was on the dais. So I know the Labor Council does great work within the community, and I want to thank them for that, but I just want to make that clarification before I make my comments. So, Paul, if you'd come back real quick. Can you give us just a quick tutorial of this property, starting back with the canal project, if you're aware of that, and then we talked about Bass Pro Shop and, you know, just stuff kind of falling off the wayside with just a large commercial project?
My time with the city doesn't date back to the canal project, so I'm not familiar with that. But this was an environmental impact was prepared approximately 2016 timeframe, and that's when this was all going to be commercial. They had, at that time, it was an anchor store. The Bass Pro Shop was going to come in, and there was this whole site was supposed to be for commercial development at that time. Due to extenuating circumstances, not to include, or which would include even COVID, for some reason, Bass Pro Shop decided not to come forward. The property owner, therefore, went after other options, and one of the options is what you see in front of you tonight.
Thanks, Paul. Still stick around, but so the canal project, going back quite a ways, you know, everybody in the community was excited about it. There's a lot of stories. Going to be a great thing for the city, and through a host of issues, it fell through. Next to bat was Bass Pro Shop, and that was coming, and everybody was excited about that. And you know, again, we're talking about a pretty large parcel here. And that fell through, and then there was hints at Great Wolf Lodge, and, you know, maybe that coming to the community. That fell through. And COVID, in the meantime, threw a curveball. And through building these retail sites, you know, the game has changed, and the game has changed for a number of reasons. One is brick and mortar stores are just harder to come by. You know, with distribution facilities, Amazon, people don't necessarily go to the stores like they did 20 years ago, i.e. like a canal project. Also funding for large commercial projects because of that hit that is taken because of, you know, the deliveries that take place again through Amazon and UPS and all the others. Getting that kind of major financing is difficult, even for very large connected developers. So we have an opportunity before us tonight on something in the neighborhood of $250 million investment in the city of Bakersfield. And when I ran for office, one of the major things that people wanted, because there is areas of poverty within Ward 7 and Old Ward 7, was jobs. You know, one thing that's going to draw you out of poverty is having a good, sustainable, really well-paying job. And I believe this project does that in spades because my understanding there could be 2,000, maybe 3,000 jobs associated with this project, along with the commercial piece, and I am confident that will be hand in glove with this project in totality. So my motion tonight is to approve it. I think in the end, I know that from the Planning Commission to others and staff have worked really hard to try and craft this and mitigate extenuating issues or just basic issues. And I live fairly close to this location too, and for me, you know, those jobs are just going to outweigh so many things. And as far as people coming from out of area, maybe for the job, I could see maybe them moving here, but commuting from, you know, Fresno or Los Angeles for an hour and a half, 2 hours to get here, gas at $6 a gallon. I don't think it's going to happen. I think this is back to the work, stay, play concept of, hey, I have a job, and I have a job that I can ride my bike to. So, again, I'm in favor of this, and I make that motion. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Parlier. Are there any requests to speak? I don't see any at this point. So seeing none, you have a motion. Please cast your votes.
Motion is unanimously approved.
Thank you. Madam Clerk, next item, please.
Council and mayor statements.
Councilmember Parlier.
Thank you, Mayor. So there's a potential opportunity, and I think it probably belongs in committee. I don't know necessarily what committee. I'm going to leave that up to staff. But there's a fire recovery fund that goes through insurance that possibly on some of our fire response calls, there's a recovery portion that could be claimed, I guess, and retained within the city. And just to vet that out, I make that referral, and again, I'll let staff figure out what's the best committee on that. Thank you so much.
Thank you. And now, Councilmember Gray.
Thank you, Mayor. Well, first I want to commend our Bakersfield Police Department. Last weekend, we had a lot of street racing going on. Two different areas were in my ward, and the third, I think, was more on the east-north side. I could be mistaken there. But anyway, there was a lot of arrests made, cars impounded, and I am thrilled to see that we are getting more of a handle on this. Unfortunately, what we've seen in the past is a lot of those that have been arrested were coming from out of town. This time, they were our own citizens. So I want to remind our constituents, our citizenship, that this is a very dangerous practice. People are dying from this practice. And those families that are going out to participate by watching these sideshows, they are encouraging this dangerous practice in our city, and people are going to die from it. So I am just saying we're serious about it in the city of Bakersfield, and we're going to crack down on it. We're seeing evidence of that. You guys are doing a great job, Bakersfield PD, and I appreciate that. So thank you for protecting our citizens by getting on top of that. The other thing is that I want to say for my friend Chris, his last meeting tonight.
Well, there's one more.
Well, there's one more, but one. Yeah, your last official, really. I just want to say that it's been a pleasure to build a friendship. And that's what's most important to me than anything. Chris and I don't always agree, do we? We don't always agree. But God has enabled us to build a wonderful friendship. And I will miss seeing you to my left. So I wish you all the best.
Thank you, Councilmember Gray. Councilmember Smith.
Thank you, Mayor. I wanted to talk about the traffic calming article that was in the paper today, and they pointed out that between 2016 and 2020, 152 people were struck and killed by vehicles in the Bakersfield metro area, making it the 7th most dangerous in the nation. And we have articles about us being the worst drivers, and a lot of deaths, and it's very serious. And also, the article stated from Mr. Strakalus that the general plan doesn't look at lane widths and street design and stuff, that comes separately, and I was wondering if that was correct or they got the quote wrong.
Councilmember Smith.
When we look at transportation's future and what we want that to be, it doesn't include traffic or narrowing roads. Those are things that the general plan will fail to answer.
Well, I think that quote was a bit incorrect because my comment was more along the lines of the opportunity that we have with the comprehensive plan in terms of addressing things like level of service, which sets the bar for roadway capacity. And right now the bar is set for a level of service C during the peak hour. And for all other times outside the peak hour, the roads are pretty much open. And the question was, do they need to be, and does the level of service need to be set at C? Or could it be set at some other level as part of the comprehensive plan amendment? And giving us an opportunity to do something a little bit different with the geometry of the road.
Okay, and we don't have to wait for the general plan to do that. You're looking at the street standards right now, correct?
We are.
And so I don't know if it had planned to, but I'd like to make sure that comes through planning and development before it gets approved, how we look at the, the arterial and collector streets and the local streets. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Smith. Councilmember Gonzalez.
Thank you, Mayor. I just wanted to report, this last weekend I had an opportunity to spend some time in Central Park, and in the playground there was at least 25 children playing in the playground, and that was a sight that I hadn't seen in quite some time. And then yesterday I spent some time in the early morning at Beale Park in Oleander, and there were people walking and enjoying, and received a number of emails and calls from constituents in Ward 2 who were complimenting the city and specifically Recreation and Parks for the Park Ranger program. It is already having an effect on our parks, and people truly appreciate that effort. So that is good news for the city, and I'm looking forward to hearing a report in time. So good job team. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Gonzalez. Councilmember Freeman.
Thank you, Mayor. Well, I just wanted to share a little story in these extremely divisive political times that hopefully now are over the election. But I was in church a couple of weeks ago, and the pastor, Pastor Jeff, right here at First Pres, he told the story, and I think it's a true story, that he went to Western Washington University in Bellingham, but he said, well, freshman year, he and his best friend had different political views, and his best friend founded the Young Democrats for student Democrats at the university. And so he said, and he was more conservative, and he said, so I formed the Young Republicans. I guess it's true. And we were roommates. And we stayed roommates for all 4 years, and we always got along great. We're still friends today. We could always talk about everything civilly, but we listened to each other. And he said, we never had any problem. We're still friends today. And I was the president of the Young Republicans, and he was president of the Young Democrats. And I thought, that is a great metaphor for all of us, with all the families dividing and the political divisive, that here's two guys who are presidents of opposite clubs, and they're roommates and best friends. So I thought that was a great story.
Thank you, Councilmember Freeman. We're blessed in our community to have so many volunteers. And this last month, through Keep Bakersfield Beautiful, just in October, we had 139 volunteers, 312 volunteer hours, who collected 124 bags of trash and planted 81 flats of flowers. So just want to extend our gratitude to all the volunteers, and then under the leadership of John Enriquez and Heather Pinella. So thank you, and the Keep Bakersfield Beautiful team. And with that, we're adjourned at 7:54.
Thank you.